Alright. It's the review probably like 3 people have been waiting for. Fire Emblem Warriors is out! What do you mean it's been a month since release? What do you mean my hardware's too cheap to handle showing gameplay and trailers? This is my review, blast it! We're doing this the James way! We're gonna hit this beast all sequential-like, tackling each category on its own and discussing whether it's exceeded or failed. Whether you already own the game and just want a different opinion, or you're still on the fence about it, prepare to have your mind opened. Is this game worth buying? Absolutely, my friends. It is worth a $60 price tag and possibly more. If you liked Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors does virtually everything better and has an even longer shelf life due to an abundance of things to achieve, unlock, and collect. Is it Game of the Year material? Not in my book, but I have heard some refer to it as such. There are a number of disappointments clinging to it like Mudfish with abandonment issues, some of which make no sense. On the whole, however, the game's a ton of fun and worth buying if you're into Warriors gameplay. Who is this game for? If you are either a Warriors fan or a Fire Emblem fan, I give this game a casual recommendation. If you are both, I give it a high recommendation. Of the 3 Warriors games I've played to date, including Hyrule Warriors and Samurai Warriors 4, this is the best one. If you love the classic Warriors gameplay of feeling like an unstoppable bad hindquarters, while also strategizing spur of the moment, Fire Emblem Warriors does it amazingly. It also has enough Fire Emblem influence to whet the appetites of many who just want to beat things up as Chrom and Takumi. All this being said, this game isn't for everyone because, well, how many of you watching this now are already turning your noses up at your screen because you think Warriors games are easy, boring, and repetitive? If you don't like the Warriors games, I doubt much here will change your mind. It is a Warriors game through and through. Be that as it may, it is a very good Warriors game, so you never know. What is the gameplay like? For those of you not already familiar, I'll give you a brief primer. Fire Emblem Warriors has you assuming control of 1 to 4 characters from the Fire Emblem series, mostly from Awakening and Fates, and believe you me, we will get at that particular mistake, and cutting through dozens or hundreds of enemies at a time to achieve victory in an all-out war. It's over the top, exaggerated, and intentionally designed to make you feel like the aforementioned bad hindquarters. The conditions for victory may be different in every level, but central to the game is capturing enemy keeps by defeating the stronger enemies that guard them, thereby giving yourself increased control of the map and dealing with even stronger enemies that threaten you and your band of heroes. Typically, failure happens if a central character dies or your base leader is killed. What may seem like a basic hack and slasher though actually has a lot of depth to it if you bother to look. The story mode isn't designed to be incredibly difficult, more on that later as well, but the challenges within history mode can push you to the limit, proving that at the end of the day, Fire Emblem Warriors is more about strategy than it is about action. You need to watch your map like Jennifer if you want to succeed in some stages. By the way, comment down below if you get my reference. Please, tell me I'm not the only one. It is entirely possible, nay downright easy sometimes, to feel invincible cutting through hundreds of hapless grunts, only to get a game over anyway because you forgot about Xander and his band of paladin miscreants crashing your base. Compared to other Warriors games, Fire Emblem Warriors demands a slower, more thoughtful approach. You can switch control between up to 4 characters, which I do believe is far more than most Warriors games, as well as issue a ton more characters' orders. Protect this guy, kill this officer, heal this captain, etc. You can also pair up your units to boost their stats depending on who they're paired with and grant them certain boons. Choosing when to separate and when to pair up is also part of the strategy. The actual combat isn't as deep as you may be expecting if you're hoping for, say, Nioh, another Koei Tecmo game, but it more than gets the job done. It relies mostly on a string of weak attacks broken up by strong attacks that can be activated at certain intervals in your weak attack string, as well as a power-up mode called Awakening and warrior attacks that can slay tons of enemies at once and bail you out of trouble. There are also some RPG influences, as you use material scavenged from battles to craft new skills and abilities for your characters and level them up with experience to increase their stats. Is Fire Emblem Warriors quote-unquote repetitive? Sure it is, in the sense that it takes a winning formula and spreads it across several dozen hours of gameplay. Not everyone can appreciate that winning formula, but we could compare it to, say, fans of fighting games or first-person shooters. Are they technically doing the same sorts of things over and over again? Yeah. Does it matter? No, because it's fun, engaging, and at times challenging. All in all, Fire Emblem Warriors beats out Hyrule Warriors in terms of gameplay. There are several characters in Hyrule Warriors I detested playing as, such as Agatha and Midna, because their playstyles were just so wildly different from my own and hard to get used to. Every single unit in Fire Emblem Warriors, meanwhile, is both easy to use and effective at what they do. None of them feel too slow or too clunky to me. That doesn't mean every character will be good at everything, but none of them feel bad to play as. I'm happy to say they really succeeded in the strategy department here. Hyrule Warriors strategy basically boiled down to what weapon you used and in what order you did things. It worked and it was fun, but Fire Emblem Warriors escalates that to a new level. Now you have to take a step back, survey the map, and plan everything, from where your units start to who they'll pair up with, to who they'll attack, to what area they'll guard. The weapon triangle, which I dreaded initially, isn't nearly as bad as I thought. Wisely, you still do pretty much the same amount of damage to an enemy with a superior type of weapon, but you have to work harder for it, and you won't get those impressive area of effect critical hits on them. The game continues to move at a decent pace despite the weapon triangle's presence. I give the gameplay aspect of Fire Emblem Warriors a firm pass, as it's much improved in virtually every regard to Hyrule Warriors, which it clearly takes the most inspiration from. Is Fire Emblem Warriors a difficult game? Yes and no. I say no because the story mode is only designed to be somewhat challenging for new players, and the first 2 history mode maps are low level and therefore designed to be easily accessible. However, the game can be mind-numbingly difficult if you know where to look. This will manifest itself soonest for completionists. If you want to unlock this character or that weapon or fill in the rest of that puzzle picture, you'll need to play at the top of your game, turning what was otherwise an easy, button-mashy sort of stage into a tense, desperate cobble of yelling at your troops, losing, figuring out what you did wrong, and trying again. Even without trying to S-rank everything in history mode though, the difficulty can rear its beautiful, majestic head in certain history mode stages, overwhelming you with tough enemies, various constraints, and unforgiving time limits. That's the way Warriors games generally are. If you just play through the basic stuff on normal and don't put yourself through the countless optional challenges, it will seem repetitive and easy. If you take the time to stop and smell the flowers, Velazark the Chaos Dragon will come screaming out of a space-time portal to rip your nose off and poke you in the eye. The story mode lets you actually switch between difficulties. Normal isn't too challenging, but still demands your attention enough to make battles feel epic. Hard isn't that big a step up from normal, so if you demand to be challenged during your first run of story mode, you might actually want to start there. Lunatic is only unlocked after beating the story mode once, and though I haven't beaten every stage on it, it does amp the difficulty up to a respectable degree. Not history mode together to the end S-rank difficulty, but enough to feel worthy of your time. Also of note is the inclusion of classic mode versus casual mode. When you first start Fire Emblem Warriors, our dearest Anna will ask you which version you want to play on. You can go from classic to casual, but for some redonkulous reason, you can't ever switch from casual back to classic if you want to taste that challenge again. The difference between them is this. In casual, all characters who fall in battle are brought back again when the stage ends, just like any other Warriors game. In classic, those characters stay dead unless you want to pay a considerable sum of in-game money to revive them. I like that they included both options, though I dislike the inability to revert to classic. To date, I have never switched to casual nor lost a character, though I have come very close to the latter multiple times. If you strategize well and exercise caution, it is the specter of death peering at you through a window, a little nerve-wracking but never oppressive. If you like to throw caution to the wind and shiny things distract you from your mission, I expect you would have to pay an exorbitant amount to keep reviving your characters. I like that you can bring them back even on Classic. The steep cost of revival means you won't bring them back unscathed, but they're never gone for good. Actually, I think I would have appreciated it if they'd have made the cost of revival even higher, since after a certain point you can acquire 300,000 gold pretty easily. I give the difficulty a pass. It is challenging where it needs to be and cathartic everywhere else, sometimes both at once. Hyrule Warriors' story was simple. Zelda characters, monsters, kill the monsters! Fire Emblem Warriors' story is, well, basically the same thing. Here we come upon the first big disappointment of this review, that being that a storied franchise like Fire Emblem, with its amazing plots and characters, has been reduced to a basic show and tell. It functions less as a story anyone would really care about, and more as a simple recreation of classic Fire Emblem scenes, but this time with Rowan and Liana. Up until most of the cast is united, it's just, hey, this is like that one scene from Awakening in one chapter, and hey, that's just like that one scene from Fates in another. Not a whole lot new or exciting going on. The premise is, there's a big bad dude with an army of monsters that has some power over other dimensions. The big bad, with the help of a traitorous nation, because there always is one in Fire Emblem, right, launches an attack on the kingdom of Atolis and accidentally summons a bunch of the heroes from Fire Emblem as well. The surviving prince and princess of Atolis, Rowan and Liana, embark on a journey to unite the cast and then kill the big bad. There is one plot twist that most players sorta did, sorta didn't see coming, but it's otherwise very straightforward, more of a greatest hits compilation than a story that functions on its own. It's also chock full of some truly stupid moments, perhaps appropriately from the Fates arc, where good guys attack good guys because they're too angry to stop attacking for 5 seconds and realize they're all on the same side. All this being said, the story's not unenjoyable, and it does have at least a couple of touching moments involving Rowan, Liana, their mother, and Darius. I don't know that I can officially give the story a passing grade, but it's not terrible. On a side note, the English voice acting is fine. Really, it is. There is a day one free download for the Japanese voices if you're truly stuck on that, but it's fine. When I hear people go on about, "Oh, the English voices are so horrid," I think what they really mean is, Hinoka sounds kinda weird. Listen to almost every other character, particularly their support conversations as that's where they're most natural, and I think you'll find they're alright. Think I'm lying? Look up Rowan and Liana's A support. Hinoka still works, even if I don't believe Cindy Robinson's portrayal was the right fit. The bulk of the cast is a bunch of voice acting all-stars. Matthew Mercer, Alexis Tipton, Kylie Baer, Yuri Lowenthal, Jeremy Lee, the list goes on. This is where the real challenge in the game lies. History mode and its wide assortment of collectibles and bonus unlocks. Basically, it's adventure mode from Hyrule Warriors but with far better pacing. As you progress through story mode, you'll unlock up to 5 maps reflective of key moments from 5 different Fire Emblem games. There is a very, very loose story attached to each one, but sadly this isn't a faithful recreation like I was hoping for. After certain battles, you might get a few snippets of dialogue without much real context, but that's it. I was hyping it up to be an abridged version of the entire story from each game, but instead it's one scene with little dialogue. Mostly that's my fault for taking info out of context. Each map is stylized like a classic Fire Emblem map, and while it's still the same basic point and click to engage as any other system, it is a cool menu. Your goal is to defeat certain enemies and open the way to the final challenge, which for some reason usually involves Valadar and the final boss from the story mode, but is satisfactorily challenging once you get there. There are plenty more enemies to take on too, some with Anna's mementos, basically the gold sculptulas from Hyrule Warriors letting you slowly unlock parts of a picture for a greater cause, and bonus rewards for doing well, like the elusive Master Seals that let you promote characters above level 15 and unlock their full potential. The stages themselves aren't always that hard. The requirements to unlock their bonus rewards often are. Again, Warriors games are plenty challenging if you know where to look. Each subsequent history mode map you unlock will be inherently more difficult than the last, with enemies at higher levels and tougher mission structures. If your opinion of history mode after casually playing through only the first 1 or 2 is that it's painfully easy, go try and S-rank some of the boss missions later on, and you might change your mind. Additionally, after beating the final boss of a map, special missions will open up that are high-leveled, usually much harder anyway with smarter enemies and tougher objectives, and can even grant you scrolls that unlock the true power of some characters' unique weapons. It's a neat touch to grant yet more longevity to the already extensive history mode. I give it a pass. It fulfills its purpose and then some. When 2 characters' bonds grow strong enough by having them fight in the same battle, bolstered by things like one unit healing the other or having them pair up, they deepen their support levels, granting you exclusive crafting materials and strengthening the effectiveness of their pair-ups. When certain characters achieve an A support with one another, they can engage in a conversation waxing on their personalities and backgrounds, and these are worth investing in each character for, each conversation fully voiced. On one hand, I'm slightly bummed they didn't find a way to include conversations at all 3 support levels like the classic games, but I also understand that would be hard to do given the amount of voice work that would entail. I am pleased to say the support conversations that do exist are quality material, some easily achieving the level of or surpassing some of the conversations in the Fire Emblem games themselves. Many made me laugh, others were deep and profound in ways I hadn't expected. The story may be mediocre, but it's worth trudging through for the support conversations. I am also pleased to say characters from different worlds can have support conversations with one another, and the game uses that to great effect. A certain character who killed Grima long before Chrom and Lucina did does not get a support with either of them and rub it in their faces, but I forgive the developers for this. Just in case the viewers here don't know the full roster and haven't seen my earlier videos and want it kept secret, I'm avoiding spoilers here. I give support conversations a pass. They didn't have to add them in, but they did anyway. Nobody really expected them to be that good, but they are. Kind of a shame there aren't more ways to build on character relationships though. Say what you will about Fates, the level of interaction it offered with its characters was golden. Fire Emblem Warriors continues the trend of taking classic tunes and remixing them with electric guitars and percussion and all that. Some of these remixes are pretty cool, worthy of the original tunes or perhaps in some cases even surpassing them. Don't expect a Hiroyuki Sawano musical score, but the themes are generally well done. A few to me sound kinda generic, little more than the original theme but with an electric guitar instead of whatever the main instrument was. However, there are some standouts, and the final boss theme in particular is both a great song on its own and a pretty good ode to the games it represents. There are plenty of FE songs represented, mostly map themes from Awakening and Fates. I'll avoid spoiling any of them, in case you want to discover those songs on your own. I give the music a general pass. I wouldn't say I was blown away by it, and in a lot of cases I feel like the music could have done more, but it was well done for what it was and has a few standouts. I saved this part for the end, because I wanted you to see an actual review and not just some guy ranting into a microphone. But, well, you're still here, right? So let's go into full-blown rant mode. Is the roster as bad as I thought it would be? No. Somehow it's even worse. Fire Emblem Warriors succeeds on most fronts, sometimes with flying colors, sometimes with crawling monochrome, but it succeeds. The story's a bit bland, sure. The difficulty is sporadic, yes. Is there just way too much voice dialogue for things that have no sense being voiced? You betcha. All forgivable things. The roster is Fire Emblem Warriors' greatest mistake, and unfortunately also its main selling point. This is an awesome Warriors game, make no mistake about that. I've heard some longtime Warriors fans call it one of the best, and if you only hopped on board with the 3DS Fire Emblem games, haven't played any of the others, and just wanted to see the characters from those games represented, you might not mind so much. However, while Fire Emblem veterans may be quite possibly outnumbered by the newer generation at this point, that doesn't mean we're so small as to be invisible. We're going to have a good deal of influence on this game's sales, and many of the older generation can't get into a Fire Emblem Warriors that represents so little of Fire Emblem. As many have pointed out, it's basically Awakening Warriors or Fates Warriors, not Fire Emblem Warriors. Again, still a great game. It is a great Warriors game. You know it's also a great Warriors game? Just about any other Warriors game. Why should someone spend their hard-earned money on this one, when other awesome games are out or are coming out demanding their attention? This game's roster was its main selling point, because that's what made it different from every other Warriors game. And the roster falls utterly flat. Without spoiling too much, there are 23 playable characters in this game, not counting future DLC. On paper, Koei Tecmo delivered on its promise to include more playable characters at launch than most other Warriors games. Part of the reason the roster feels so hugely disappointing is that 8 of those characters are all clones. The actual number of unique playstyles is 15, also known as possibly the lowest of any Warriors game. I get that having multiple archers or Pegasus Knights in one stage can potentially come in handy, but why did they have to shaft so many good characters to get there? The biggest reason the roster falls flat is the downright terrible representation of Fire Emblem. No matter how you cut it, it's still a failure. Yosuke Hayashi, the producer, put his foot so far into his mouth it's practically tickling his tonsils. He claimed Fire Emblem Warriors would focus on only 3 games so it would have equal representation from different classes, and it wouldn't just be all lords and swords. That misses the point of a Fire Emblem Warriors, but whatever, okay, Hyrule Warriors did it too, right? What could go wrong? Well, even if you buy into that logic, which you shouldn't because Zelda barely has eligible characters and Fire Emblem has literally hundreds, it still falls flat. Why? Because of the 23 playable characters, only 7 are not from Awakening and Fates. 2 of them are original, Rowan and Liana, nice characters, but nobody asked for them. Shadow Dragon, the poor thing, has only 3 characters represented, and 1 is a clone. Now, if equal representation was really their goal and they, for instance, needed a good bow user, why not throw in Gordon from Shadow Dragon? Or considering the 2 games that have 1 represented character each, why not try and flesh out their rosters a little more? The focus was so exclusively on Awakening and Fates that the whole equal representation thing utterly falls apart. Especially when you consider that the biggest class represented is lords with swords anyway. And there was no reason not to represent all the games fairly. Don't give me that, but Awakening and Fates are the most marketable bullcrap. Throw in Chrom, Lucina, Robin, and Corrin and you've already got the attention of the new generation. Promise more characters from the new games as DLC. Boom, sold. Now you need the attention of the old generation. Where's Ike? Where's Hector? Roy? Sigurd? Leaf? Ephraim? Erica? Where are the actual fan favorites from all across the series? And by the way, the story was not the reason Hayashi only focused on 3 games. Well, 2 really, because Shadow Dragon barely counts. With the possible exception of the Dragon's Table from Shadow Dragon and Awakening, 0 stages from the Fire Emblem games are represented. Never do they travel to a world outside the one with Aetolis and Gristone. There is no reason they could not have brought in heroes from all across the series to join Rowan and Liana, considering only 5 of them are considered crucial to the plot. There is no point in the story where I said, "Oh, good thing they only represented 3 games, that makes the story much more focused," because it doesn't. Those games barely have any actual representation outside their selected characters. No story elements, no stages, just a handful of characters and battle themes. So that's where the roster is. Disappointing in terms of actual unique characters, even more disappointing with its chosen characters, more disappointing still for knowing it happened for no discernible reason. Hayashi's strategy of hope they buy the first game to make the second game better just sounds ridiculous. A significant chunk of his team threatened to leave during production over his roster demands, and it's easy to see why. He even laughed about some of them saying he wasn't a true Fire Emblem fan. I don't know, Hayashi. From here it looks an awful lot like they might have been right. You're telling me you could not figure out a way to market Fire Emblem Warriors to the new generation while still remembering that the old generation exists? If you're somehow out of the loop and you still have trouble understanding the big deal, imagine that someone is making Lord of the Rings Warriors, but all the characters are from The Hobbit except for Faramir and Eowyn. Or maybe that someone makes a Pokemon Warriors, but all the Pokemon are from Sun and Moon and X and Y, except for maybe Blastoise because why not? It just wouldn't make sense. Yet somehow Hayashi thought this was a good idea. Well, stick around for Fire Emblem Warriors 2 in a few years if it happens at all. The ship may not be sunk yet. Just like with Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors is slated to have a large chunk of DLC extending its playtime. Each DLC pack is supposed to have 3 characters, most of whom were already in the game but were unplayable and with cloned movesets, 2 new history mode maps, new support conversations, and some new costumes. Sounds like a lot of bang for the player's buck coming up, and I approve, in general. I already made a video about my opinions on the DLC as a whole. If you don't already know, it's only going to focus on the 3 Fire Emblem games already represented, with the Fates pack first, then Shadow Dragon, and finally Awakening, releasing in December 2017 and February and March 2018 all respectively. Yes, that's a massive missed opportunity to explore older games and appease the older generation, and no, I don't believe for a second they're going to focus on those older games in any DLC packs after the first 3. Maybe a few characters from the games with 1 represented character each, but no more. I approve the large amount of content coming out, just not with a focus on, yet again, the 3 games with the most controversial characters. For those of you griping that it's just giving us mostly characters that are already in the game, it's not that bad. This isn't them locking content in the game behind a paywall. This is them giving actual movesets and unique abilities to unplayable clone characters. It's fine. On top of that, for the games being focused on, I do like the characters they've chosen in general, even if I do have a few better ideas. I've accepted that Fire Emblem Warriors just isn't going to have anything for older fans, and as such I approve of the DLC as it is. Fire Emblem Warriors is a great game, full of dozens or hundreds of hours of content, effective strategy, and flashy gameplay. It'll be awesome if you've only played the 3DS Fire Emblem games, less so if you're an older fan hoping for the Fire Emblem action game of your dreams. As far as a lot of key developers and some fans are concerned, we don't exist. We can only state our case and fervently hope the roster isn't a train wreck in the next game. But really those embody my only gripes. The story's disappointing, the roster is a punch in the gut for older fans dreaming of a Fire Emblem Warriors since before its announcement, and the DLC is a missed opportunity. The gameplay is solid, the playtime is extensive, the challenge is there if you want it, and it's got a decent amount of Fire Emblem influence for old fans while having plenty for new fans. I stand by my earlier statement. This is a casual recommendation for people who are either Warriors or Fire Emblem fans, and a high recommendation for both. It's worth the price tag if you're into repetitive, but quality, action strategy gameplay. I don't know if I'll release quite so many Fire Emblem or Warriors themed videos in the future, but game reviews will be a regular thing, I think. I'm not prestigious enough to get review copies or anything, but after a game comes out, I'd be happy to play along and then give other players my full opinions. Let me know if you enjoyed the review and if it helped better inform your decision to purchase or let it go, and subscribe for more reviews in the future. Thank you for your time. Smash the subscribe button. Obey the dark voice in your mind. It will grant you your deepest desires in time. If only you subscribe.